Hey loves. So the title of today's video and newsletter is Thank God I Did That. And it has to do with some reflections I'm having as I've closed the 5th year of the school. So just yesterday was our final call to complete this last 9-month cycle of her mystery school, which was its 5th. And it's open now for enrollment for the next, which starts September 26th. So that's part of what I'm being present to, and I wanted to let you know that if you've been thinking about joining, you can now, and we start at the end of next September. There's a couple of incentives for early registration. It just helps me to know who's coming. I'll put all that information below. As a kind of, some reason I'm thinking of it as a going away present or something, so a completion present to you as I'm completing this 9th month of the school and just feeling, there's always at the completion, there's a real, I receive a lot of what actually has transpired over the 9 months, because we're aware of many things that we're cultivating and many things that we're moving through. And at that moment of completion, there's an opportunity to realize, oh no, that's what I've really been cultivating. Well, this is who I've really become. It's a really beautiful moment. And I was, that thank God I did that, as in thank God I created the school, has to do with how many times now the school has kind of saved my life, or there's a way that for me, it's this treasury. So I'm focalizing it, I'm teaching it, I'm holding it, and I'm also inside of it, and I'm being anchored by it. And as I'm going through the school, again and again and again, it does what it's meant to do, which it reminds me, right? I slip into forgetting in different ways. I move into amnesia of different things. And because it's so regular and because it's holding it, because it's a treasury, it will remind me and bring me back again and again to, here's the thing, it's not like these are things that we're learning that we never knew before. I mean, there's some pieces in there probably, but a lot of it is remembrance. And the movement isn't I'm this and now I become something new, or I'm this and you show me something new, or anything. It's, oh, in the light of this, in the light of this teaching, this person, this life situation, or this experience, I'm remembering this, right? So with the school, that's the point. And it works that way for me. And I was gonna today just share 3 invitations with you that have been, the school is 36 weeks long, and there's practices, and there's all sorts of things in there. It goes through 9 different aspects of deep feminine sensibility. And as I'm holding it, it's starting, year after year, some of the deeper fundamental movements are becoming clearer to me. And so I was going to share 3 of those as invitations to you to consider in whatever way it kind of plays out in your psyche, in your heart, in your world. These are some of the fundamental things that I feel like the school holds for me, and why I'm so grateful, why I thank God that I did that, that I did it. First one has to do with this: sit down in your power. That there is, this is a women's mystery school. And one of the most important aspects of it for me is that it is fortifying personal power, self-authority, deep knowing, deep, inherent, unassailable value and worth as a woman, but doing it in a way that's not in opposition to anything else, not in opposition to men, not in opposition to the patriarchy, not in opposition to certain aspects of yourself. That there's a way that, and this has become more clear to me lately, that as soon as we define ourselves in opposition to something else, we've made ourselves weaker, right? And for me, it's an interesting kind of illusion of power, or a certain level of power, to define in opposition. Well, I'm not that. Well, that's that, but I'm this. That's that, but I believe this. There's always an inherent posturing in it. And it's vulnerable, because ultimately deep feminine power deep feminine presence has no need to define herself in opposition to anything, because she is what is. And to embody that and to align with that ourselves in our individual lives and in the way that we hold ourselves and the way that we hold our everything, is to realize that to be powerful is to soften down in and back into the power that is. That there's an effortlessness, that it's a resourced feeling, and that it's unassailable and inarguable because it's not in opposition to anything else. It just is. It just is what is true. It just is what you are. It just is, right? And to continually pull back story and pull back all the habituations and all the everything, to just rest in that and then move from that. To me, that's an underlying kind of foundational gift of the school. And one of the things it brings me back to again and again is that to really be in my authenticity, to really hold the presence that is mine to hold, to really hold authority, it will always come from sitting back and down and in to the power that is, rather than attempting to rise up or posture up or even articulate into something in front of myself, something that lifts me up and out of the root in the moment, right? So I just invite you to feel your way into that, kind of see what it could be like to play around with that. You know, how you know that you're kind of up and out of your real source of power is that you're up and out. You're in front of yourself a little bit. You'll feel it if you start to tune into it, that you're up and out and in front and you're moving, and there's a reach and there's a push and there's a posturing and there's energy needed to hold that up and then to defend it and then to define it and then to redefine it and all these things. You know, it takes something because it's not anchored in just the simple ground of being. So we invite ourselves to just soften down and back, come home, homecoming, be willing to let go of the reach, let go of the posturing, to be willing to get quiet and see what comes from there, and to be willing to let all the things fall away that don't exist anymore once we've actually returned all the way home. So that's one of the things that I'm grateful for with the school, is that constant reminder, that constant remembrance. It's really easy to get defensive. It's really easy to posture, and it's really easy to get pulled into this interesting way that our world has right now of defining people based on their opinions, based on their appearances or their rhetoric or how they show up and what kind of impression they're able to give in all sorts of ways. It takes something to realize that that's all illusion at the end of the day. And if it's based in oppositional thinking, it's vulnerable and it will have a hard time coming to its full truth and really acknowledging, acknowledging what we actually all share, and acknowledging and creating, mending the fabric of life rather than continuing to fracture it. So sit down in your power. And how that feels is it feels restful, nourishing, and eventually it feels neutral in a certain way, very alive, but not charged, passionate even, and all of the things, but not charged. There'll be a neutrality to it that just is what it is. And a kind of belonging and a kind of support in it. All the other ways of moving out from ourselves and reaching and all those things, we disconnect from what we really need, which is support. It's why we often feel so lonely, why we feel so tired and so weary, right? Is because what's meant to be infusing us and holding us up and informing us and energizing us is something we've disconnected from. So this is like a reconnection and a real coming home, a homecoming. The movement down, back, and in. Anyway, stop there. That's one of the things that I value. Another one of the teachings that seems to be most valuable, or not, yeah, that really moves a lot of women and shifts something for them, is this understanding of befriending your weariness, right? And kind of along with that is really understanding that self-sabotage isn't what we thought it was, and that there's this way in which we can't be an enemy to ourselves, and whatever's moving through, whatever we're feeling, actually has maybe not, it might need a little cleaning up, it might need a little sorting out, but at its root, always, if it's from us and in us, it has our best interests at heart ultimately, right? And it's just for us to kind of polish it off and understand the medicine of it and understand how to move with it. So befriend your weariness as an invitation is to really start to forge an alliance with the fallow, the dark, the quiet, the underneath, right? The hidden, the silent, this whole kind of realm of life that is in some ways the deep feminine realm, the root of that. And so befriending our weariness is actually a pathway home to that. It's a pathway home to authentic power and presence, because once you befriend your weariness, once you understand that if you're weary from something, that probably means it's pretty much time to let some aspect of it lay to rest. Then all of a sudden, weariness, instead of being something to fight, instead of being something to kind of juice up or resist, weariness becomes a pathway home every time. Like, oh, I'm too tired to keep this up. And from that place, we instinctively will find the good nourishment. We'll find what we're really thirsty for. And we'll kind of be forced closer and closer to the truth, because we're too tired to hold anything else up. And there is an enormous gift in that, and especially in the school, we're working with the complete cycles of life. So we know that by befriending weariness, we align with the cycle that then brings life from that weariness, new life, sustainable life, what's true. So that would be the second thing that is kind of, as I'm reflecting on the year, seems like, at least for me, a really important one. I am afraid of being very tired. When I'm very, very weary, I often resist that. I feel afraid of it. I don't want to be that helpless in the way of just like, okay, I got nothing more to give. But the more I learn to rest without resisting, to trust it, the more it actually is like truth serum. Not only is it kindness to myself to allow my body and my being to rejuvenate at the times that she needs to, but there's also a truth serum in that. There's less and less willingness, less and less habit in place to kind of push me into things that I don't really have the energy for, or I actually secretly don't believe in in the first place. So sitting down in power, befriending your weariness. For me this year, the kind of third thing, that the one thing that surprised me, that was more alive for me than it has been in other years, had to do with restoration of virginity and what that really is. So in the school, it's 36 weeks. So there's a way that every woman moving through the school will have certain weeks or certain months that are just lit up for her. It has to do with where she is in her life and what's just where the medicine really is for her. And other months that just kind of don't really totally arrive. Well, not usually a whole month, but other teachings or other moments, they're just not quite like that. Or they might just feel like, yeah, no, that one just didn't really, that really didn't kind of meet me the way that some of these others have. And then these women, as they go back through the next year, or they come back around again, will notice that all that has changed. Other months now are actually the ones that are most potent, and they're hearing things that they don't, as if they never heard them the first time around, right? So there's this beautiful way that the school, the mystery of the school and the mystery of woman work together. And so of course that's happening for me. So this year for me, what the teaching that felt really powerful and important for me had to do with restoration of virginity. It's in the 8th month of the school in Heavenly Mother, when we work with the virginal and immaculate conception. And all I want to say about that, I mean, I don't want to try to really get into that, because that is one of those moments in the school where we're kind of touching into a bit of a deeper, more specific set of teachings and remembrances. But what foundationally is there is this remembrance that at any point, no matter what has happened, we can restore virginity. There is an interrupted but unbroken lineage of understanding of how to do that, and how to bring ourselves back to a virginal state, not meaning never having had sex before. To understand what virginal really is a whole other thing, right? It is wholeness. It is a certain kind of purity. It is woman as one unto herself, maiden, innocent, right? It's a return to, it's a restoration of virginity. And so that we can at least know, whether or not it's articulate in your life right now, or, just to even know that there is actually a body of wisdom that is old and that has been maintained, that has to do with these teachings and this. And it's all about redemption, right? And to somehow accept, whether you come through her mystery school or not, that is reality, that's birthright, that your being as a woman can and does restore virginity many, many times throughout your life. And what that means is coming back into your intact wholeness, your congruency, right? Really understanding that at the deepest level, no matter what happens, and many things will happen, and too many of them will be out of our control and may really hurt and may really require a certain amount of redemption. No matter what, we were made to restore virginity. It's one of the capacities of the female body and female being. It's just a very interrupted one, and one that to me is one of the ones that feels like it's held in the inner teachings still, and is one of the most deeply comforting things I think that the school and in general the body of deep feminine wisdom holds. Because we are on this life path and we don't know what's coming, and we get impacted and we lose ourselves for sometimes reasons that are out of our control. And to know that there is much in place in life, in the body of womankind, in your body, deep, like there are incorruptible presences, knowings, wisdoms, whatever you want to call those, inside of you that can return you to yourself again and again, no matter what time of life, what's happened, none of it matters. Restoration of virginity is just something that we know how to do if we're reminded, right? If we remember. So those are some of my thoughts. And those three things, amongst many other things, are why I thank God that I obeyed the call and really listened deeply enough to bring the school together and to create it into it always feels, the more I go through it, the more it's like, oh, this is a treasure house. I'm focalizing it. I get that. And that's a particular role, but it also feels like I just steward it, and I I do it as much for my own benefit, for my own need to remember, as I do in service to other women who also share that need to remember. So even those three things, this is how simple it is. Sit down in your power. Befriend your weariness. Remember that you can restore your wholeness, your virginity, your purity, that you're made to do that. Even just to remember those three things in this moment with me, what difference does that make? Because there's an amnesia related to each one of those things. And we can forget for long periods of time unless we help each other remember. That's the journey, right? At least that's been my experience. Anyway, thanks for sharing a little bit of time with me. I'm a little tired today. We just closed the circle yesterday, so I'm entering a little bit, or closed the cycle of the school, so I'm entering a little bit of fallow restorative time. You are welcome, of course, to join me for the next 9 months. Registration just opened. If you register before July, I think 13th, the full moon in July, I'm doing a Sacred Needs intensive course that is free with early registration. If you have any questions, you can reach us at support@hermystery.school. We will start on September 25th. Lots of other things will be happening until then, but I would love to have you, and you're always welcome. If you've been called to the 9 months, there is something, sitting right here at the other side of the completion together, there is something so potent and beautiful about committing to yourself for that long, letting yourself be in a container for that long, right? Because all these things happen inside of it, and somewhere underneath there are things in us that can only ripen with enough time, right? And enough holding during that time. And that's a lot of what we were present to yesterday, and it was so beautiful. So, whether it's her mystery school or something else, I think it's important for us to understand that that's why, why we go into larger containers and longer containers, is because there are some things that just won't ripen unless they have that, won't reveal themselves. So however you do that in your world, I hope you do it. And I hope that you also take the time when there are these long cycles of life like closing, or long cycles of commitment, or containers that you've been in, or that you really do take a moment and look beyond what you've received, beyond what maybe you've been in therapy for 3 years and you're very aware that XYZ is something you don't do anymore, and you can see some of the things. It's clear. I promise you, if you've given yourself that long, there are things that you've cultivated that if you just ask to be shown and drop a little deeper, you'll be amazed, right? They've been kind of growing underneath. Something's been cultivating. Many things probably have been cultivating and growing as you've been aware of subtler and different changes on the surface. And that's where we change at the fabric of our beings. And sometimes that can just stay kind of invisible. That's what we did yesterday. We brought out of invisibility. What have we been becoming that we didn't even realize we were becoming? And all you have to do in order to know that or to see that is to ask the question. It's not rocket science, but we often don't take the sacred pause. It's not what our world does. We don't take the sacred pause. We don't, as a practice, bring the invisible into the visible, into light, and give it space to actually fill us. So those are some invitations to you right now as I complete this 9 months. And yeah, wow, I wish you all the best. I'm about to head out on the road, and I'll be in touch with you about that. Lots of things on the horizon. Yeah, in the meantime, blessed be.